Hi, I'm Kayleigh, the adventure specialist for Mastermind Adventures, and today we have another fantastic GM that I'm talking to about their experience. Today we have Léa Schmidt. Hi, how's it going, Léa?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing good, doing well. So let's get started. Tell me a little bit about how you got started playing tabletop games and then running tabletop games.
Well, you see, it all started when I was born. No, but really, like my parents both played second edition AD&D, and it was in my blood. I was playing in games with them and their friends when I was, little tiny kid, and ever since then, I've just been into them. I was playing. I was like one of those little kids hanging around my LGS, and then I was, picking up D&D fourth ed when it came out, and fifth ed when it came out, and getting, branching out into all these systems and getting into it on the internet. I've been doing it for basically my entire life.
Awesome. So like, you didn't have that like rebellion of like, oh, my parents like tabletop games, so therefore I'm gonna be a jock.
No, no, no.
No.
I pretty hard embraced a lot of the same things they did.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool to have that opportunity. In terms of running games, did that just come naturally after playing them? Did you have a point at
No,
which yeah.
I was really bad for a long time. I still distinctly remember the first dungeon that I made and how much it resembled a video game. Um, but no, this is my current level is definitely the product of hard-won experience.
Yeah, I mean that's what it takes. Very cool. So I know you are somewhat unique among our GMs. We have a mix, but you run a lot of games that are not D&D, and
Yeah.
you have experience with that. What would you say to someone who maybe their only experience is D&D? What would you say to convince them to try a different tabletop game?
That's a great question. I think I would say something along the lines of, so every game is designed for a certain experience, right? And if you want to do dungeon delving, if you want to do like progressing in that way, in terms of like exploring these very set areas in like that kind of way, D&D is built really well for that. But there are a lot of systems that are built for other kinds of things, that have rules that are designed for telling different kinds of stories and having different, but focusing different kinds of character actions that are great to try out. If you want your like spooky scoundrel action, Forge in the Dark is going to be like a really really great option for like that whole atmosphere of like risk and pushing, right? If you want, something that's very punchy and very genre focused and like very very genre fiction, Powered by the Apocalypse is like really your thing. And there's like a lot of like things like that where I consider it like a toolkit, right? What kind of story are you trying to tell? What are you trying to focus? What that's like going to determine what kind of system you want.
And also for anyone who isn't familiar, what could you give like a brief overview of what some of the different systems are?
Yeah, so Powered by the Apocalypse is like the big name in rules light gaming in the last like 5 or 10 years. It's a, like I said, rules light, narrative focused. Those are both buzzwords, but it's
Mhm.
like a rules light, narrative focused umbrella system based around a particular model of how game mechanics interact with narrative. That's a little complicated to break down, maybe in the context of this interview, but it's about that whole interplay between game mechanics and narrative and making them into one smooth flow using something called moves. Um, it also tends to be class based. Most of the PBTA games are class based. Other than Powered by the Apocalypse, I'm a big fan of Freeform Universal just because it is like the simplest distillation of a story-based role-playing game you can possibly get, in my opinion. I have played around with Witcher Thurgis Fatalist, which is maybe like the most out there role-playing game ever written. Um, I have dabbled in some of the more rules-heavy classic stuff. Shadowrun, Vampire the Masquerade are both things that I've played around with. I'm actually a big fan of New World of Darkness, or Chronicles of Darkness as it's now called. Um, God, what else? There's a couple others. Savage Worlds is another one of those. It's an interesting little system. Um, and then there's like all the little indies, like all
Mhm.
the little weird little like indies or like PDFs that I downloaded off of, that like somebody was just throwing up on the internet of their like little tiny indie system, stuff like got Sword and Burner. There's like a little Lego RPG that I have, like all kinds of strange stuff like that.
It's is it played with Lego like
Yes, that's the
minifigs?
whole point. Is it's played
Oh,
with
that's
Lego.
fun.
There's a papercraft one too that actually comes with like the whole set to like cut out an entire dungeon and play it.
Oh wow. It's really interesting
Yeah.
to see, what sort of creativity folks are able to put
Oh yeah,
together to
it's great. I
create
have all
something
these
really.
PDFs from like all these like weird like forum threads back in the day, and like half of them are unreadable garbage, but half of them are like just these really interesting weird concepts.
Mm. So I think this is a good chance actually to talk about the games that you're running for Mastermind.
So currently I'm running Dustful by Lamplight, which is a Blades in the Dark game. Um, that game I'm running it kind of as like a very straightforward like Blades in the Dark. If you've never played Blades in the Dark before, this is like a great game for you. Blades is like my hotness right now. I'm in love with Blades. I ran it for some friends. I've been running some games for it recently, and it's just such a cool system. There's so many cool things that you can do, and I think it's a great fit for like a lot of the people who are coming through our door. People who are like maybe like newer or like have like a middle level of experience and want like a really solid like jam experience and like something that's like very fun and pick up and play. I think Blades is a great solution. And then for my one shot for like a lot of like the newer players, I'm running something that is at this point a little old school. I'm still a fan of Dungeon World. Like I'm still a fan, and so I'm running this Dungeon World game. It is Treachery and Iris Fort. The idea is it's kind of like a spooky kind of like Lovecraftian sort of little thing where you're like a party of adventurers in like this more traditional like multi-code sort of sorcery kind of setting that pulls into a port city, and are kind of like mired in the politics of the city, the corruption in the city watch, and because you're pulled in by a guard who wants to do something but whose hands are tied by those politics, and you guys being adventurers are outside forces that can then act in that and should unravel a conspiracy that then gets a little creepier.
Um, I think you started to say what Blades in the Dark was about. It's like more of sort of a band of criminals. Type
Yeah,
thing.
so like what is Blades in the Dark about? That is not actually a simple question. Blades in the Dark is cut from the cloth of gothic fiction and crime, like turn of the century crime fiction at the same time. The whole idea is that you are in this like crazy post-apocalyptic kind of Gilded Age, kind of romantic era, like turn of the century kind of world, um, where the sun has gone out and there's all this like crazy technology involved around ghosts and like Leviathan blood, and you play as in this okay, so the city of Duskville, and it's like full of criminal gangs, right? It's very very corrupt, and there's like all of these criminal gangs that run this like really huge underworld, right? And you are one of a very small crew of scoundrels trying to make your way in the world, right? But of course, anything that you take for yourself, you have to take from somebody else. So, like the whole time, like the game is about like risk. Oh gosh, getting my thoughts in order for this is always so hard. I love Blades, but the game is really about risk, right? On a mechanical level, the whole idea is to do anything, you have to take risks, and eventually those risks come back to bite you. So it's this game of like one of the things they say in the book is play your character like they're driving a stolen car.
Mhm.
So you have this whole thing of like from the moment that your character like comes into being in the fiction, they are already holding something that doesn't belong to them. The turf that they're claiming, the area of the city where their crew, their gang is doing like criminal operations, is technically owned by somebody else. They're already stepping on someone's toes. And so from this established point, your crew does scores, you do prep, you do heists basically, or like operations that gain you notoriety, gain you fame, gain you money, but also constantly have these consequences piling up that you have to deal with. And that's like the core loop of the game, right? Is this like constant roiling vortex of like advance, take two steps forward, but your consequences start to creep up. So you go and deal with them, but it causes something else to happen. And then you have to do another score to fix that problem. And like you're juggling plates, you're putting out fires. And that's all against the backdrop of this like big, like post-apocalyptic, very gothic setting, in like the terms of like gothic literature, this whole thing of dealing with the old versus the new and the dark versus the light. It's very much a big part of Blades. I could
And
go on about this for hours.
yeah, no, it's very clear that you're very passionate about that, and I think that's really awesome. What do you think is interesting about playing morally gray, or as you said, scoundrels, playing those kind of characters?
Well, I mean, there's something human about it, right? Like when you play a paladin in Dungeons and Dragons, you're always lawful good, right? You have the or has I changed that in recent editions? I don't know. Anyway, you're always lawful good in my mind.
Mhm.
Like you have this alignment that is you, and like the game has this prescriptive statement about like what lawful good means and how you're the good guy, right? And there's something interesting about that, right? Like playing a paladin can be very
Mhm.
fun, and like those limitations are very fun. But there's also something about like, why is your character a criminal? Who who is this person, and how did they get here? Like like what does your character do? There's something gritty and something real, and yet something very very daring. Like there's an old adage in Shadowrun that every group eventually becomes about hooding, which is do it like Robin Hood, like looking out for the little guy. And you have this like there's like an honesty in robbing from the rich to steal like stealing from the rich to feed
Mhm.
the poor, right? And so we can kind of look at these like daring criminal types as very very sympathetic heroes, or anti-heroes, I guess. um and so I think that's part of it for me, is like I'm drawn to crime fiction because there's more realism to me to like a scoundrel with a heart of gold than like a a more conventional like good guy.
Do you feel like people are eager to play that sort of character?
I think
Is
some people.
there have people, I guess, like, have you had to like encourage your players to get into that, or do they come on like already like I'm ready to, yeah, I'm ready to be morally gray, yeah.
Yeah, when you put it that way, no, absolutely not. The only thing I've ever had to push people to do is take risks. But
Yeah.
like the thing is, yeah, the fiction here is just so cool that you get a
Hmm.
like I've my experience has mostly been one of buy-in and one of like enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Um, for the most part, like the toughest part is just getting people to buy into like the idea of the setting, because like doing risky
Hmm.
stuff is scary. But no, being a criminal.
Do you have any stories from your games when either maybe a player has done something really surprising, or you've surprised your players, or just something that was like, oh, this is a really memorable experience?
All right, so this group I was running for a few months ago, right?
Mhm.
The one of the guys that was in it, you know how I mentioned like a lot of the time with Blades, I have to tell people like take risks, take risks as part of the game.
Yeah.
This guy did not need any advice. This guy did not need any encouraging. He was running straight at every single mechanic that allowed him to gain any kind of advantage, regardless of the risk. He was very very bought into that, and like in word and in deed, in like every possible way. So the group were working for this client who he specializes in. Well, he collects husks, and what husks are is they're the bodies of people without a soul. As you can imagine, this guy is pretty creepy. Yeah, this was like these guys are assassins, so this was like some kind of dark work. And basically, this guy has taken an interest in like this artist over in like another district of the city, and they want him. He wants the party to basically take this guy's soul out and deliver his body to them. And then like what they do with the soul is up to them. So anyway, um they're casing this guy's apartment because there happens to be an art gallery. And they find out by breaking into his room that he's connected to the crows. Now the thing about the crows is, until very recently in like the story of my game, they were the most powerful gang in the district called Crow's Foot. Um, Recently, their leader was deposed. He was killed, in fact, rumored to be by his second in command, and that's thrown a bit of a power struggle into the district. But still, the crows are not something that you mess with, right? The crows are scary, and so when they find this out, the rest of the group is like pretty worried. Like they're casing the joint. They're like doing a stakeout, and one of them is broken in, and the rest of them are pretty worried. Meanwhile, Slackjaw, God bless him, is sitting on the roof of this apartment building when he sees our artist friend, come on from a neighboring rooftop. It's also been established at this point that our artist friend has some kind of unspecified whisper power. He can talk to ghosts, basically, and he can manipulate the ghost field. He can manipulate like the plane of existence where ghosts are on. So basically, I was kind of setting up like, oh, there's this big scary aura of like spookiness of like, this character's really scary. You don't want to mess with this guy. And he goes in through a trapdoor into the apartment building. This was like there was a failed roll. Slackjaw tried to tackle him, but he missed. And he makes his escape. And Slackjaw's like, I follow him in. And I just look at him, I'm like, you follow the whisper into his home? And he's like, yeah, I do. And like, because I had no expectation they were going to do this, right? I had no expectation that he would do anything so brazen. And of course he does. And I proceeded to improvise this like crazy like hall of mirrors, like what happens when you follow like the psychic talks to ghosts artist magician connected to the crows guy into his home. And so they get stuck in this like this classic like PT infinite loop of like all the paintings on the walls. And I started like messing around with some of their characters' backstories, and it was just like this one surprising moment where I was able to spin the whole thing off into like a really, really great like little sequence, like little horror sequence that ended up, they ended up like, oh man, if I remember rightly, they ended up breaking out of it with a clue on his tail, and then they ended up finding him in the next session. But like that moment where he was like, I follow him in, was just, oh, it was so good.
Yeah, totally. How would you describe your GM style in general if you had to sort of summarize it?
Improvisatory.
Mm-hmm.
I have tried planning. I have played games that necessitate planning. And I've kind of like pushed back against it. Since pretty much as long as I've been any good at this, my style has been to learn a game system in its totality, learn everything that I possibly can about it, and then run everything that I can off the cuff. I really prefer to just adapt to what is happening around me, and like to make sure that I have the skills and the knowledge to do so. But like in general, I play very fast and loose with most of the rules, and I try to fix a good understanding of like, what is this system about? What is this game about? What am I trying to accomplish in my mind? But yeah, in general, my style is very improvisatory, very open, very yes and. It's a bit of a cliche, but it's true.
What are the parts you enjoy most about running games? What excites you the most?
I love the feeling when, maybe this is a cliche too, but like I love the feeling when everything's like just spinning, right? When the engine's going at like that perfect speed, where so like this would happen a lot in Shadowrun, actually, when I was playing Shadowrun. I would have all this information ready about like whatever was happening, and my players would have all their information, and then like, the decker is like breaking into the system, while the mage checks for wards, and the rigger sends like his like fly spy over the fence to like check everything out, and it's all just playing out like a movie,
Mm-hmm.
like those moments where like everyone knows what they're doing, and like everyone's on the same wavelength, and like it's like we're all telling the same story, we're all
Mm-hmm.
contributing, but like we're all so on the same page that all of these ideas just work really well together. Like that's the magic. I think that's what we all play for, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
like that for me is the magic. I've described it as the writing room. I love when a game feels like that, where it's just ideas are coming out and everything's working.
How much do you like to incorporate, what people come to the game with? And someone comes in with an idea of like, oh, I'd really like to explore this theme with my character, or I think this is an interesting flaw about my character, something like that.
So my initial knee-jerk response is actually just that's what it's all about,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little over the line. I would say like a little more than what I mean. But
Yeah.
like really, that is how I feel, right? If you're coming in with like, oh, this is a thing that I want to explore. This is a theme that I want. This is a flaw that I want. This is what I want the game to look like. Awesome. I want to take that in. I very much am someone who like typically with a game will set out to accomplish something, but that doesn't mean that I'm like, here like my way or the highway, right? It's more that like I'm putting a system out there and the system has a purpose. And like generally my I have a theme that I want to explore. But if you come to me and say like, oh well, this is a theme that I want to explore, and those two themes are compatible, oh yeah, that's what I'm about. That's like the whole point of it to me.
What are some of the themes that you like to explore with your games?
Well, what day of the week is it? Um,
I know you've already talked a little bit about that sort of the sort of scoundrel type characters and
yeah,
enjoying that, living in that sort
I
of gray
do like
space. Hmm.
I like those very like humanizing stories. I
Hmm.
like stories that are very down to earth, is I think the phrase I was looking for earlier. Like bold heroism and all of that is really cool for me. Is really cool and all, but for me like I really like the stories that are about people and like are about like people the way that they really are. I like to tell stories that are real, and like I say, like I don't want to say like gritty. I don't want to say like stuff like that because I don't like stories that are like needlessly grimdark. But
Hmm.
I like crime stories because they make you ask real questions in a way that like a superhero story like Superman kind of doesn't. Like
Yeah.
like like I like stories about real people, and that sounds like such a vague cop out, but if you get it, you get it. Like it's I like things that are really down to earth and are really really human.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially when we're talking about tabletop role playing games, a genre that
Can be very
traditionally,
escapist.
yeah, there's you want to play someone from a different world usually. It's a very different experience, but you have to, you still want to find those connections and those human
Yeah.
experiences, no matter what type of creature you may play. Let's say someone comes from a totally opposite point of view, or like not point of view, but maybe doesn't know what they want to explore. Maybe comes in totally like, I don't know, I don't know what this character is. They don't feel real to me. How would you help that person find something they want, someone they're excited about playing, and a story they're excited about doing.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's the other side of the coin of like the
Mhm.
previous question, right? Like, is if somebody comes in with like a developed idea, well, I've got this like core theme, but I'm totally malleable. I'm totally willing to like incorporate new stuff. But if you've got nothing at all, well, I've got this core theme, right?
Mhm.
And like, what resonates to you about this? What's cool to you about this? When I tell you like, oh, power corrupts, that's our theme. What's the first piece of media you think of? Okay, cool. Now, what's your favorite character about that? Why? How does that interact? Like, let's get talking, right? Like, I like to start with these core ideas. I'm putting my slice of the pie out. I'm putting out. We're cooking soup. I'm bringing out the base, right? And so if someone's got something else to bring and throw it in, cool. See how they mix. If they don't, then here, or if they don't know what they should be bringing, well, here's what we're starting with, right? Here's like where we're starting, and so here's like a place for you to go from. A
Yeah.
lot of my stuff is based around genre fiction as well. So if you have, if you have like any kind of experience with that kind of fiction, or like just like have a decent vocabulary, then like it's really easy to get that ball rolling in my experience with the right kind of guidance.
What are your inspirations for your stories? I know you talked about crime fiction.
Honestly, I get inspired by like so many things. Like pretty much any piece of fiction that I'm consuming, like will end up giving me some idea, right? Lately, I got a lot of ideas from my most recent Blades in the Dark game from Persona 5.
Hmm.
That game's awesome. I've been kind of like honestly, I've been toying with the idea of like a Persona style Forge in the Dark hack because I think that would be sick. But like, yeah, that game's amazing. I watched a ton of Peaky Blinders as well. That show's awesome. The like stuff that I grew up on, like the classic sci-fi. I loved
Hmm.
Ender's Game and stuff when I was a kid. Um, Ender's Game is a great example of like that, like more humanized, like it's like sci-fi. It's really about like the perspective of Ender and like in terms of everything else. so much of it is like built in now. I'm like one of those people that read a ton as a kid and just doesn't read anymore. Um, oh my God, you know what? I can tell. I can tell I'm already going to start putting into games. Arcane. You've seen Arcane?
I have not. I just heard the name recently. I don't know that much about it. Okay.
Look, I know I'm a League player. You don't have to be a League player to enjoy it. Watch it. It's so good. It's exactly what I'm talking about. But like, yeah, really, it's hard to say like what my I don't have like these like pillar inspirations. Which might be what you're looking for here. I don't have them. It's like, what have I watched in the last month? What have I consumed? What have I been doing?
It just like crops up in your games, like a little, just implanted in your brain. Totally. Thank you so much for talking to me. This was a really great discussion.
Yeah, it really was. I had a great time.
Yeah. Do you have if there's anything else you want to plug, anything else you want to say to wrap it up?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of social media, so I'm just like all that stuff. So I'm just gonna say, games not named D&D, really cool. Give them a shot. I think there's a lot of apprehension around it, and a lot of people. I promise you, they are so fun, and like the right system for you is just waiting for you to find it. So give it a shot. Maybe join my games.
Check out Leia's games at Mastermind, and if you would like some guidance getting started, either with Leia's games or any other of our GMs, feel free to email me at KREICHMAN@mastermindadventures.com, and I will help you get started. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leia, and
thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone for watching. Bye. I need a fun wrap up. Keep gaming on. That's a terrible one. We won't use that. All right, bye.